I'm sitting in a glass-walled leadership meeting when my boss says my name out loud and calls me the weak link. He says it calmly, professionally, like he's stating a fact about the weather or quarterly earnings or something equally mundane and unchallengeable. Everyone listens. No one looks at me. My chest goes tight, and my hands grip the armrests of my chair harder than necessary, knuckles going white against the black leather. This wasn't a slip of the tongue or a careless moment or an accidental insult. It was deliberate, measured, delivered with the confidence of someone who's already decided how this story ends and who gets written out of it. The VP of Operations nods slowly, taking it in. The CFO makes a note on her tablet, stylus moving across the screen. My boss, Andrew, continues talking about efficiency and optimization and restructuring for the future, using all the right corporate buzzwords that sound important but mean nothing specific. And I sit there wondering why he'd say it with me in the room. If he wanted me gone, if he'd already decided I was the problem, he could have had this conversation without me present. It would have been easier, cleaner, less awkward for everyone. But he didn't. He wanted me to hear it, wanted me to feel it, wanted me to know exactly where I stood in his version of the company's future. That tells me something about what's coming next. My name is Elaine Parker. I'm 47 years old, and I've worked at DataStream Solutions longer than anyone in that meeting, except the CEO himself. I started here when we had 12 employees working out of a converted warehouse, back when everyone did everything and titles didn't matter much because we were all just trying to keep the business alive. I'm divorced, raised 2 kids while working full-time, managed school pickups and soccer practices and parent-teacher conferences while handling system emergencies at midnight. I've never once needed saving or hand-holding or special treatment or extra accommodations. I've handled system crashes at 2 a.m, trained every new hire for the past decade, kept this company running through 3 different growth phases and 2 major market downturns. Hearing myself reduced to a liability, hearing Andrew tell leadership that I'm the problem holding us back from our potential, tells me something important has shifted. Not in my performance, which hasn't changed. Not in my capabilities, which have only grown stronger, but in his perception of what he can get away with, in his calculation of who has power and who doesn't. I wonder what they decided about me before this meeting, before I walked into this glass room, before Andrew practiced his calm, professional voice in the mirror. Years ago, when the company was small and chaotic and barely surviving, I quietly built the internal system that keeps everything running. It wasn't part of my job description. I was hired as a senior analyst, supposed to review data and generate reports for the sales team. Nothing more complex than that. But I saw how disorganized everything was, how much time we wasted, how many opportunities we missed because nobody could find the right information at the right time. Information lived in scattered spreadsheets across different computers. Different teams used different tracking methods that didn't talk to each other. Nobody could find anything without asking 3 people and waiting for email responses and hoping someone remembered where they saved that file 6 months ago. So I built something better. I taught myself database architecture on weekends, reading technical manuals and watching tutorials and experimenting with different approaches. I spent months designing workflows, creating a centralized system that connected inventory management, sales tracking, customer service records, and accounting functions. I didn't ask for permission or extra pay or special recognition. It just needed to be done, and I was the only one who saw how to do it. Over time, people stopped asking how it worked. They stopped wondering who maintained it or updated it or fixed it when problems appeared. They just assumed it always would work, like electricity or plumbing or the internet, something that existed without effort or expertise or constant attention. They forgot that systems don't maintain themselves. No one checks on me afterward. The meeting ends and people file out quickly, avoiding eye contact, pretending they didn't just watch me get professionally executed in a glass room where everyone could see. Andrew sends a cheerful follow-up email an hour later, thanking everyone for their participation and commitment to the company's future. Using words like alignment, and strategic vision and moving forward together, as if we're all united in purpose and nobody just got labeled as dead weight. I read it 3 times looking for any acknowledgement of what he said about me, any recognition that he just called me inadequate in front of the entire leadership team. But there's nothing. Just corporate language that sounds positive and means nothing. The kind of email that could be sent after any meeting, regardless of what actually happened. I realized the meeting wasn't about improvement or honest assessment or genuine feedback. It was about permission. Andrew was asking leadership for permission to do something, and he needed them to agree that I was the problem first, needed them to see me as expendable before he could move forward with whatever he's planning. Permission to do what exactly, I don't know yet. But I recognize the setup. I've seen this pattern before in other companies, other departments, other situations where someone gets quietly pushed out. You don't publicly label someone the weak link unless you're building a case for something bigger, something that comes later. Andrew starts describing the system in meetings, my system that I built from nothing, but he describes it incorrectly. He talks about legacy infrastructure and outdated processes and how we need to modernize everything for scalability and growth. He mentions the system's limitations without understanding why those limitations exist, why I built certain constraints into the design, what problems those constraints prevent. He explains technical decisions he didn't make and doesn't understand, speaking with confidence about architecture and integration points and data flow. Somehow, in his version of history, he's been guiding its evolution for years, steering us toward better solutions, making strategic decisions about the company's technical direction. I sit there listening to my own work being misrepresented, watching him take credit for decisions I made alone in the office at midnight, watching him blame me for constraints that keep the whole thing from collapsing under its own complexity. Junior team members who don't know better nod along. They believe him because he's the boss, because he speaks with confidence, because they've only been here 2 or 3 years and don't remember when the system didn't exist, when we tracked everything on paper and in disconnected spreadsheets. I wonder if anyone actually knows the truth anymore, or if Andrew's version is becoming the official story simply through repetition, through the power of his position, through people's tendency to believe whoever speaks with the most authority. Andrew calls me into his office on a Wednesday afternoon, just before lunch when the office is relatively quiet. He gestures to the chair across from his desk, his expression carefully concerned, practiced sympathy in his eyes, and tells me I seem tired lately. Burned out, maybe. He says it gently, like he's worried about me. Like we're friends having a caring conversation about my well-being instead of a boss setting up his employee for termination. He suggests I might want to think about stepping back, taking some time off, considering whether this role is still the right fit for me at this stage of my career and my life. It sounds gentle. It feels like a warning. I've worked here for 15 years without taking more than a week of vacation at a time. I've never missed a deadline or failed to deliver or called in sick unless I was genuinely unable to function. Suddenly I'm tired. Suddenly I need to step back. I ask him what he means specifically, what performance issues he's seeing, what concerns have been raised about my work. He waves his hand vaguely. Nothing specific, he says, just an overall sense that I'm not as engaged as I used to be, not as enthusiastic about new directions, not as flexible about changes. I leave his office understanding exactly what's happening, seeing the script he's following. Step back or step out. Those are my choices in his mind. Either I resign quietly or he pushes me out with justification. A younger hire named Connor is introduced at the next team meeting as someone who'll support Elaine with system management and help modernize our technical infrastructure. He's 29, has a computer science degree from a good school, and talks confidently about optimization and scalability and modern solutions and cloud-native architecture. He doesn't understand the system. I can tell within 5 minutes of conversation that he's never worked with anything this complex or this customized or this deeply integrated into every aspect of the business. But Andrew praises his fresh perspective, his innovative thinking, his willingness to challenge old assumptions and bring new ideas to the table. Connor uses buzzwords like agile methodology and microservices architecture and API-first design without understanding what they actually mean in our specific context, without knowing why we built things the way we did, without recognizing the problems his suggestions would create. He suggests changes that would break everything, that would disconnect departments and lose data and create chaos. Andrew loves it. He nods along, asks Connor to develop proposals, tells him to be bold and not worry about resistance from people invested in the old ways. I start realizing that confidence matters more than competence here. That Andrew values people who sound impressive over people who deliver results, who talk about innovation over people who actually build things that work. I wonder how long it'll take before Connor's confidence breaks something critical, and whether Andrew will blame me when it does. Whether I'll be the one held responsible for not preventing the disaster. My annual performance review happens 2 months early, scheduled without explanation or warning. Andrew sets it up through a calendar invitation marked urgent, sits across from me with a document he's clearly prepared in advance, spent time crafting, and walks through feedback that's suddenly vague and lukewarm. No specific examples. No concrete metrics, no reference to any of the successful projects I completed this year, or the problems I solved, or the emergencies I handled. Just language about meeting basic expectations and limited growth potential, and challenges with adaptability to changing organizational needs. I've received excellent reviews for 14 years straight. Last year, Andrew called me indispensable, said I was the backbone of our technical operations. Recommended me for a significant raise. Now I'm barely meeting expectations? Now I'm showing limited growth potential? I ask for specifics and he deflects, saying it's more about overall patterns than individual incidents, more about trajectory than any single data point. He mentions my resistance to new ideas and difficulty collaborating with emerging talent, and tendency to defend existing processes rather than embracing innovation. He means Connor. He means I don't automatically agree with everything Connor suggests, even when Connor's suggestions would destroy years of carefully built infrastructure. The review is careful, calculated, documented, and designed to create a paper trail. Language that can be used later for whatever Andrew's planning, justification, for decisions he's already made. Later, for what, I still don't fully know, but I'm starting to understand the shape of it. I start writing things down. Not for revenge, not initially, not because I'm planning some dramatic confrontation, just for clarity, just to see the pattern clearly instead of feeling confused and gaslit and unsure of my own perception. I buy a notebook with dated pages and begin keeping careful notes about everything. Dates, when decisions were made. Conversations where Andrew contradicted himself or misrepresented facts. Times when my suggestions were ignored and problems appeared exactly where I predicted they would. Instances where Connor's changes created issues I had to fix quietly without credit or recognition. I document who was present for each discussion, what was said, what was decided, who agreed with what. I note when Andrew describes my work incorrectly in meetings. I track the times he takes credit for solutions I implemented. I'm not building a case yet. I'm just trying to see the situation objectively, trying to understand what's happening and why, trying to separate Andrew's narrative from reality. But the notes start revealing something I hadn't wanted to acknowledge, a pattern that's been developing for months. Andrew isn't just incompetent, he's deliberately rewriting history, systematically erasing my contributions while positioning himself as the visionary leader who's been held back by outdated team members resistant to change. And I'm the outdated team member he's planning to remove, so he can claim full credit for the system I built, so he can bring in someone he controls, so he can shape the story however he wants. A former coworker named Vanessa texts me a screenshot on a Friday evening while I'm making dinner. My job has been quietly posted online. Same responsibilities I currently handle, but with a new title, Systems Integration Specialist, and a salary range that's $30,000 less than what I currently make. The posting mentions preferred qualifications that match Connor's background almost exactly. Recent degree in computer science, experience with modern development frameworks, familiarity with cloud infrastructure and agile methodologies. She asks if I'm leaving. if everything's okay, if I knew about this posting. I didn't know. Andrew never mentioned posting my position. He never asked if I was planning to leave or if I'd be interested in transitioning to a different role. The job description is careful to avoid saying it's a replacement, phrasing everything like it's a new role created for organizational growth. But anyone who reads it can see it's exactly what I do, just repackaged and devalued. I screenshot the posting, add it to my growing file of documentation, and wonder how long they've been planning this. How many meetings happened without me? How many decisions were made before Andrew ever called me into his office to suggest I seemed tired? How long has he been building this case while smiling at me in the hallway? I text Vanessa back saying I didn't know. Thank you for telling me. And then I sit with my phone in my hand, wondering what happens next, whether I fight this or let it happen, or find a different option entirely. Andrew's tone changes suddenly on Monday morning. He stops by my desk with coffee and a friendly smile, asks if I have time to document everything about the system for continuity purposes and organizational knowledge management. He calls me invaluable. He says the company needs to protect institutional knowledge, needs to make sure nothing's lost if key people are unavailable or transition to different roles. He's using words like unavailable instead of leave or resign or terminated. He wants comprehensive documentation of every process, every workaround, every integration point, every piece of tribal knowledge that lives in my head. He wants it all written down, captured in guides and manuals, transferable to whoever comes next. I recognize panic when I hear it. Someone, probably the CEO or the CFO or both, asked Andrew what happens if I leave, and he realized he doesn't actually know how the system works. He can't replace me without the knowledge I carry in my head, knowledge that never got formally documented because I was too busy maintaining everything and fixing problems and keeping the company running to write comprehensive guides for my own eventual replacement. So now he needs me to document it all, to hand over the keys to the kingdom before he pushes me out the door. The irony isn't lost on me. He's asking me to enable my own replacement, to make myself redundant, to ensure the company can survive without me before he fires me. What does he need from me now? Everything I know, captured and packaged so Connor can pretend to understand it. I document what's visible. Processes, steps, workflows, diagrams showing how data moves through the system from one department to another. I create clear guides with screenshots and explanations, walking through each major function step by step. I make everything look comprehensive and complete, like I'm being cooperative and thorough and professional. But I don't document judgment. I don't document instinct. I don't document the invisible decisions I make constantly to keep everything stable. The small adjustments and corrections and preventive actions that happen automatically after years of experience. There's a difference between knowing the steps and understanding why the steps matter, when to follow them exactly and when to adapt them to circumstances. What errors mean something serious, and what errors are just noise in the system. There's no way to write down 15 years of pattern recognition, of knowing how the system behaves under stress, of understanding which shortcuts are safe and which ones will cascade into disasters. I don't document the workarounds I built for problems Andrew doesn't know exist. I don't explain why certain processes seem inefficient, but are actually preventing much bigger issues from emerging. I don't detail the monitoring I do constantly, the small fixes I make before anyone notices problems, the way I balance competing demands from different departments. I create documentation that looks complete, that would satisfy any reasonable audit, that gives the appearance of transparency. I wonder if they'll notice what's missing until it's too late. Until Connor's following the steps but getting wrong results, until the system starts failing in ways they can't predict or prevent. Leadership announces restructuring at an all-hands meeting on a Wednesday afternoon. The company's growing, they say. We're expanding into new markets and new services. We need to modernize operations and create room for new leadership and fresh perspectives to take us to the next level. Several roles will be phased out and replaced with positions better suited to the company's future direction and strategic goals. My role is on the list. Andrew doesn't meet my eyes during the announcement. He stands in the back of the room, looking at his phone, pretending to be busy with something important. The CEO thanks everyone for their flexibility and commitment during this transition period, acknowledges that change is difficult but necessary, promises that the company values everyone's contributions past and present. People are given 30 days to decide if they want to apply for new positions or take severance packages. I do the math quickly. 15 years of service, decent severance policy built back when the company actually valued loyalty. They're offering me a buyout, compensation for going quietly, money to make this easier for everyone. I could fight it, apply for the new role they posted, make them go through the process of formally rejecting me and documenting their reasons. But I know how that story ends. Andrew's already built his case. I'm the weak link, remember? I'm outdated, resistant to change, holding the company back from its potential. Do they think I'll beg? Do they think I'll fight for a job where my boss calls me a liability in front of the leadership team? Do they think I have nowhere else to go? A former colleague named Patricia calls me that evening. She left DataStream 3 years ago to join a competitor, a smaller company that's been growing steadily through quality service and smart strategy. She heard about the restructuring through the industry network because people talk, especially in our specialized field where everyone knows everyone. She asks if I'd consider coming over to her company. Their internal systems are failing, she says honestly, no sugarcoating or corporate spin. They've tried 3 different solutions over the past 2 years, and nothing works properly. They need someone who can build something stable from the ground up, someone who understands how to integrate different departments and workflows, someone with actual experience creating systems instead of just managing or maintaining what someone else built. She's not offering a lateral move or a consolation prize. She's offering a senior director position with equity and a 20% pay increase and a team I'd build myself. I tell her I need to think about it, need to process everything that's happening. But I'm already thinking, this is my exit. This is the door opening while Andrew's pushing me toward a window. Patricia says take your time, but not too much time, because their current system is barely functional and they're losing money and customers and patients. Is this my exit? I think it might be. I think it might be exactly what I need. I accept Patricia's offer quietly. I don't tell anyone at DataStream yet. I want to see how long it takes them to feel the loss, to understand what they're actually losing before I'm completely gone, before they realize documentation isn't the same as expertise. I sign the new contract, set a start date 6 weeks out to give myself time and give them enough rope to hang themselves and begin mentally preparing for the transition. But I don't submit my resignation. Not yet. I keep coming to work, keep maintaining the system, keep fixing problems before anyone notices they existed. Keep being the invisible backbone that holds everything together. Connor shadows me sometimes, watching what I do, taking notes on his laptop, asking occasional questions. She doesn't ask good questions. He doesn't understand why I'm checking certain logs or why I restart specific services in a particular order, or why I'm monitoring certain metrics more closely than others. He just wants a checklist he can follow, a recipe that'll tell him exactly what to do in every situation. Andrew seems satisfied that knowledge transfer is happening, that Connor's learning, that everything will be fine. I wonder how fragile what I built really is. How long before cracks appear? How long before they realize documentation isn't the same as understanding, that checklists don't replace judgment, that watching someone work doesn't mean you can do the work yourself? I'm about to find out. And part of me is curious to see how this plays out. Small issues start appearing within the first week. Delays in data synchronization between departments, reports generating with missing information, customer service tickets taking longer to route properly to the right teams. Nothing catastrophic yet, nothing that stops business operations. Just friction, where things used to be smooth, inefficiencies where processes used to flow seamlessly. Connor's been making improvements based on the documentation I provided, optimizing processes he doesn't fully understand, removing what he thinks are unnecessary steps, streamlining workflows that were designed carefully for reasons he can't see. Andrew notices the delays, but blames transition stress, normal growing pains, temporary inefficiencies that'll resolve once everyone adjusts to new workflows. And Connor gets more comfortable with the system. He's not worried yet. The system still appears to be working from the outside. Reports still generate, data still moves, nothing's completely broken. But I see the patterns forming, the small problems that'll become big problems, the stress points where Connor's changes are creating instability in the foundation. I've been here before, years ago when I first started building this system, when I was learning what worked and what didn't. I remember what collapse looks like in its early stages. The warnings are there for anyone who knows how to read them. For anyone who understands systems and complexity and cascading failures, but Andrew's not reading them. He's too busy praising Connor's initiative and modern thinking. Andrew calls me after hours on a Wednesday evening. "Quick question," he says, voice tight with stress he's trying to hide. "There's a problem with the inventory system. Numbers aren't matching between warehouses and the main database, and Connor tried to fix it but made it worse." Andrew doesn't say Connor made it worse. He says the situation became more complex than anticipated, and they need some additional expertise. He wants to know if I can look at it tonight. Just a quick fix, shouldn't take long for someone with my experience. I look at my phone, at Andrew's name on the screen, at the time showing 8:30 in the evening, and I don't answer. I let it go to voicemail. He calls again 15 minutes later. I don't answer. He sends a text asking if I'm available, saying it's somewhat urgent. They have warehouse operations affected. I don't respond. I'm home having dinner, relaxing with a book for the first time in weeks, enjoying my evening without company emergencies. And I'm not fixing problems for someone who called me the weak link, who's replacing me with someone less qualified, who's been systematically undermining me for months. How long before he admits he needs me? How long before he has to say it out loud, instead of pretending this is just a quick question for a team member who happens to be available? I'm curious to see how desperate he gets. Leadership starts asking detailed questions in Friday's operations meeting. The CFO wants to know why reporting accuracy dropped 3 percentage points this week. The VP of Sales wants to know why customer data isn't syncing properly with the CRM system, why his team is working with outdated information, why opportunities are being missed. Connor sits there with his laptop open, searching through documentation frantically, trying to find answers in the guides I wrote. He explains what the system should be doing according to the process documents, but he can't explain why it's not doing those things, can't diagnose where the breakdown is happening, can't propose solutions. He suggests the problems are temporary, related to recent updates he implemented, fixable with some adjustments once he identifies the root cause. The CFO asks what adjustments specifically. Connor doesn't have an answer. He talks about needing to investigate further, review logs, consult the documentation. Andrew jumps in, deflecting, promising to investigate personally and report back by Monday, assuring everyone that these are normal transition issues. But I see the executives exchange glances. They're starting to wonder. They're starting to question. After the meeting, I hear the CEO ask Andrew privately, who actually understands how everything works at a deep level, who can fix this quickly. Who does he think of? The answer's obvious, but Andrew can't say it. Not after calling me the weak link. Not after restructuring my role away. Not after building a case for my departure. So he says Connor's still learning the system. Give him time, he'll get up to speed. Time they might not have. Time that's costing them money and credibility. Human Resources emails me Monday morning asking if I'd be willing to consult short-term for DataStream after my transition period ends. They frame it carefully, professionally, with lots of corporate language about valuing expertise and ensuring business continuity. The company values my expertise and institutional knowledge, wants to ensure continuity during this transitional period, would compensate me fairly and competitively for my time and availability. It's marked urgent. They need an answer within 48 hours because the situation is becoming critical. I read the email twice, understanding exactly what happened over the weekend. The system's degrading faster than Andrew expected. Problems are multiplying and cascading. Connor can't fix them because he doesn't understand the underlying architecture. Andrew finally admitted to someone, probably the CEO after multiple executives complained, that they need me. And now, HR is trying to set up a consulting arrangement before I'm completely gone, before they lose access to my knowledge entirely. But they want me to consult on their terms, their timeline, their budget. They want me available to fix emergencies while paying me as a contractor instead of an employee. No benefits, no security, no guarantee of hours, just someone they can call when Connor breaks something. I don't respond immediately. I let the email sit in my inbox while I think about whose terms actually matter here. Theirs or mine. Who has the power in this negotiation? Who needs who more? I reply to HR with a single condition. I'll meet with leadership to discuss potential consulting arrangements, but Andrew can't be present at the meeting. The meeting needs to be direct conversation with actual decision makers about what the company actually needs, without the politics or history or ego between me and my current boss interfering with honest assessment. I expect them to refuse, to say Andrew needs to be involved as my direct supervisor, to insist on proper chain of command. Instead, they accept immediately. The meeting is scheduled for Wednesday afternoon, just me and 3 executives, the CEO, CFO, and VP of Operations. Andrew's not invited. What does that tell me? It tells me they already know. They already understand that Andrew's the problem, that his ego and his poor decisions created this situation, that whatever's happening with the system is directly connected to how he's managed me and this whole transition. They're cutting him out of the conversation because they need honest answers, and they won't get those with him in the room defending himself and spinning the narrative. I prepare carefully for Wednesday, printing documentation about what I actually built, organizing timelines showing when problems started, getting ready to tell the truth without Andrew's narrative framing everything. This is my chance to set the record straight. I'm not going to waste it. I explain the system calmly, clearly, and completely. For the first time, leadership actually understands what they have, what I built, how it all connects, why it matters. I show them the architecture I designed, the integrations I created connecting 7 different business systems, the workarounds that keep everything stable despite limitations in the underlying software. I explain why certain processes exist, what problems they prevent, why Connor's optimizations are breaking things by removing safeguards he doesn't understand. I walk them through the difference between documentation and understanding, between knowing the steps and knowing when to deviate from the steps, between following a checklist and actually solving problems. The CEO listens without interrupting, his expression growing more concerned as I explain. The CFO takes detailed notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. The VP of Operations asks smart questions that show he's finally grasping how complex this is, how much expertise is required, how much they took for granted. I explain what's failing now and why, what'll fail next if Connor keeps making changes without understanding consequences, what it'll cost to bring in an outside firm to rebuild what I created over 15 years. By the end of the meeting, the room is silent. They finally see it. They finally understand what they're losing, what they already lost. Who does this expose? Andrew. Everything I'm saying exposes Andrew's incompetence, his dishonesty, his ego-driven decisions that prioritized his control over the company's stability. The VP of Operations asks the question directly. Why were you labeled the weak link? He's looking at papers in front of him, presumably my performance reviews, Andrew's restructuring, justification, the case that was built for eliminating my role. The room is quiet. The CEO leans back in his chair waiting for my answer, watching my face. The CFO has stopped taking notes and is just watching me, waiting to see how I respond. They want to know if I'm going to defend myself, explain Andrew's incompetence in detail, blame my boss for the entire situation. Do I speak, or do I let the silence answer? I choose silence. I don't defend myself. I don't attack Andrew. I don't list his failures or his lies or his mismanagement. I just let the question hang in the air while they think about everything I just explained, everything they learned about the system they took for granted, everything that's breaking without me there to maintain it. The CEO nods slowly like I've confirmed something he already suspected. The CFO closes her notebook with a soft thud. The VP of Operations says quietly, "I think we understand what happened here." They understand. Andrew called me the weak link because I made him look weak by comparison. He couldn't control me, couldn't take credit for my work while I was here documenting everything, couldn't build his own reputation while mine was solid. So he tried to eliminate me, and he's destroyed the company's infrastructure in the process. The truth was in what I showed them, not what I said. Sometimes silence is the most powerful answer. Andrew is placed on administrative leave, pending review. I hear about it through the office network before any official announcement goes out. He's out effective immediately, while leadership evaluates operational procedures and management effectiveness. In our department, it's corporate language for "we're investigating what he did wrong and whether he still has a job." HR asks me again about consulting. I decline politely but firmly. My resignation stands. I'm leaving on the date I planned, starting my new position with Patricia's company, building something new where my work will be valued from the beginning instead of taken for granted until it's gone. Connor submits his resignation 2 days after Andrew's suspension. He's smart enough to read the situation, smart enough to know he's in over his head, smart enough to leave before everything collapses completely, and he gets blamed for disasters he can't prevent. Without Andrew protecting him and promoting him and defending his changes, he's got nothing. The system continues degrading. Problems multiply and cascade. Leadership brings in an expensive consulting firm that charges 3 times my annual salary to attempt repairs, but they're struggling because they don't have 15 years of context and the documentation I created only covers the visible parts. What happens when I walk away for good? They find out exactly how much I was worth, exactly what they lost, exactly how badly Andrew's decisions damaged the company for the sake of his ego. At my new company, I rebuild a system from the ground up, but this time it's different from the beginning. Patricia introduces me to the team as their new director of systems architecture, the person who's going to solve the integration problems they've been struggling with for 2 years. My name is on the project from day one. My role is clear. My authority is respected. When I make technical recommendations, people listen because I'm the expert they hired specifically to fix this problem. When I build something, everyone knows I built it. There's documentation with my name on it. There are project plans that credit my design. There's no Andrew taking credit, no Connor suggesting changes he doesn't understand, no corporate politics around who deserves recognition for what work. Just clear expectations, professional respect, and the freedom to do what I'm good at without someone constantly undermining me or questioning my value or positioning themselves to take credit for my work. Do I feel vindicated, watching my old company struggle while my new company succeeds? Or do I feel free, finally building something without constantly defending my value or proving myself to people determined not to see me? Both. I feel both. But mostly I feel free. Free from proving myself to people who were never going to appreciate what I brought. Free from playing politics instead of doing work. Free from watching someone else get credit for what I built. Months later, I learn Andrew was terminated quietly after the investigation concluded. No dramatic announcement, no company-wide email explaining what happened. Just a brief note about leadership changes and strategic realignment that doesn't mention his name. The company is still repairing damage from his decisions. They're still paying consultants enormous amounts of money. They're still struggling with system stability and lost institutional knowledge. I close my laptop and feel something I hadn't felt in years working at DataStream. Peace. Not satisfaction at Andrew's failure, not pleasure at the company's struggles, not vindication at being proven right. Just peace at knowing I was right all along. I wasn't the weak link. I was never the weak link. I was the backbone, the foundation, the structure holding everything together, while Andrew took credit and built his reputation on my work. And when he pushed me out because his ego couldn't handle my competence, because he needed me gone to claim my achievements as his own, the whole structure finally showed its cracks. Not my cracks, his. The company survived without me eventually. They rebuilt with expensive help and painful lessons and a year of lost productivity. But they never got back what they lost. You can't rebuild institutional knowledge. You can't restore 15 years of expertise and pattern recognition and judgment. You can't undo the damage of calling your best employee the weak link just because she made you look bad by being good at her job. They learned that the hard way. I learned something too. My value doesn't depend on being recognized or appreciated or credited. It just is. And now I work somewhere that knows the difference between real expertise and confident incompetence. Somewhere that understands that the people who build the foundations are more valuable than the people who take credit for them. That's not vindication, that's just finally being seen clearly.